Now to a weekly feature on Newsday. We call it The Numbers, and we interrogate some of the data and some of the statistics behind the big stories. Africa Check senior researcher Kate Wilkinson is with us as per usual. And today is an interesting one, Kate, and I think very apt as well. We're going to look at road death numbers in South Africa, whether we believe them or not, whether they're over or underestimated. And it comes at a very important time because the Transport Minister, Bladen Zamandi, announcing just a short time ago, in fact, on this program yesterday, that 510 people had died on South African roads over the Easter holidays, and the disturbing aspect of that was that it was a 14% increase. But what you've done is you're looking at figures from the Road Management Corporation, and this would comprise the latest numbers available in 2016. What's the big picture, first of all?
The big picture is, if we look over a whole year, just over 14,000 people died on South Africa's roads in 2016. And when it comes to a provincial breakdown, we see quite a disparity. The province which had the highest number of deaths was in fact KwaZulu-Natal, where 2,715 people lost their lives. This was then followed by Gauteng with 2,700 people. And the province with the lowest number of deaths was the Northern Cape, where 409 people died that year.
And I presume there is a ratio there to number of people who live in the province and people who visit the province. I mean, for instance, more people would visit KZN than the Northern Cape, for instance.
Absolutely. So when we look at these numbers, we have to remember that although provinces might have quite high deaths, you have to take into account the number of people who live in that province to find out which province has the highest relative risk.
So where do we stand then in terms of overestimation or underestimation? It all comes down, I would imagine, to efficient reporting.
Absolutely. So the numbers we get from the Road Traffic Management Corporation are actually taken from police reports. So when there's an accident and there are fatalities, police go to the scene, they record the deaths, and then this data is extracted. However, not all people who die because of road accidents will have a police report or investigation. They might end up going to a hospital, and it will never actually be recorded as an official road death. So in order to account for this, the South African Medical Research Council actually did an injury mortality study in 2009. And using post-mortem reports, which were nationally representative, they estimated that year that just over 17,000 people died because of road accidents. And this was substantially higher than the just under 14,000 that were recorded by the police.
All right, Kate, let's test the claim now that Mpumalanga is the most dangerous province when it comes to road deaths. We do know that conventional wisdom would suggest that the highway through to Nelspruit is busy and it can be dangerous. Do the figures back that up?
So looking at a provincial breakdown for relative risk, we know KwaZulu-Natal has the highest number of deaths, but when you take into account the population, and why you do that is because it's generally assumed that the more population you have, the higher number of people living in an area, the more accidents they're going to be. But taking into account population, what we see is that Mpumalanga is actually the most deadly province when it comes to road deaths, with 36.1 deaths per 100,000. Interestingly, the provinces with the lowest fatality rate are actually Gauteng and the Western Cape, where 20 people per 100,000 died in 2016.
Kate, a perennial problem in this country are pedestrians. The minister, when he was speaking to us yesterday, was again referring to the problem of jaywalking. 38, almost 39% accounting for all road deaths, say the figures. Again, does that hold up?
So, like you said, the figures we have when it comes to pedestrians, they account for the largest figure of deaths at 38.4%. This is followed by passengers at 32.7%, then drivers at 25.6%, and cyclists coming in and accounting for 3.2% of deaths. Of course, when you look at a mortality survey, these numbers may differ, but the numbers from police show that it's our pedestrians which are actually being hardest hit in this regard.
And just finally, another phrase that's bandied about the whole time, and it's never quite made sense to me, is that human factor plays the biggest role in road accidents. I would contend that cars are driven by human beings. In other words, we're always in the mix on this particular one. What are we trying to learn there?
So when it comes to fatal crashes, there can be three main different contributing factors which are attributed to the cause of that crash. And like you say, the human factor is actually the highest contributing cause at around 77%.
This would be speeding, drunk driving, that kind of thing.
Jaywalking, hit and run accidents. And I guess this is concerning because we're playing the biggest role, but there's also hope there, because if we can change our behavior, we could bring down these numbers. Then environmental factors come in second place, and they account for around 16% of all fatal crashes.
What are environmental factors?
So we're talking about poor visibility on the roads and wet driving conditions. And then lastly, it comes down to the conditions of our vehicles, and those account for 6% of fatal crashes. So we're talking about things like tyres bursting and faulty brakes.
And as the Minister was saying to us yesterday, the critical challenge for government is to change behaviour in that respect. But I also put to him that we've had many other transport ministers saying exactly the same thing. What is needed is a new strategy in that respect. We'll see you next week.
Absolutely.
Kate Wilkinson from Africa Check, as we'll test the numbers again on the programme.